Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Shadow Chasers show. Tonight we're talking to Kris Sumner from Soul Sisters Paranormal. What we're going to do is just see who's joined us.
We got a Facebook user, so if you could just allow permission for the StreamYard link, then we'll be able to see who's commenting.
I hope everyone's well and had a very good weekend. We sure have. We've been out investigating, so we're back to doing what we enjoy.
Oh, yes. Hi, Valerie. Let's wait for a few more people to come in. But yes, it's been a really busy weekend for us. It has been hectic. We went to Shattamala Prison, which was awesome. Lots of activity there.
Got back at the early hours this morning, so I apologise if we look very tired.
Right, let's bring
Kris.
Dr. Kristy Sumner on.
Hi, Kristy.
Hi, Kristy.
Hi, Jess and David. How are y'all doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Glad to hear it. Doing very well, staying very busy, but I'm excited to speak to y'all tonight.
Thank you.
Been waiting for this one.
It's been been really looking forward to this one. Just for the viewers and everyone else, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Kristy Sumner, and I'm the founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal. And it's a team that I founded with my twin sister, Jenny, and our younger sister, Michelle, and then 2 female family friends. And it actually started as a girls' trip. So we had the opportunity to go to Moundsville, West Virginia in 2013, and that's the home of the former West Virginia State Penitentiary, which is one of the most haunted places in the country. And we had a family friend that sat on the board of the prison, and he said, you know, while you're here taking this girls' trip, why don't you take one of your nights and stay in the prison and see if you can connect with any of our resident spirits? And the evidence that we captured that night was so compelling to us that we really decided that we wanted to form Soul Sisters Paranormal and really delve into the history of these historic locations, as well as see if we can couple that with any paranormal activity and evidence. And that's what we've been doing since 2014.
Wow.
Keeping busy.
We have been, yes.
So was that the most, with the Western State Penitentiary, was that the most active place you've ever been to?
No, we've been there twice, and the activity has been very good at that penitentiary. I'd say that the most active place that we've been to, though, is the old Gilchrist County Jail, and that's in Trenton, Florida, which is about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida. And this is a small county jail. It's got a very small footprint. It had 4 cells on the bottom level, and then 4 cells on the top level, and a small jailer's cottage that was connected via a doorway to the bottom level of the jail. And it was built in 1928. It was in operation until 1968. And when it closed, it actually sat abandoned for decades. So it became a location where drug deals went down. Vagrants would go in and tag the place with graffiti. So it really became a rundown location. And then the owners purchased it and really didn't fix it up that much, just made it safe for people to go in. But, when you looked at it initially, you saw the vines and the Spanish moss hanging all around it. Very creepy vibe outside. But then when you got inside, it was extremely active. So we've investigated there twice. The first time was just myself and Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations, and she and I were the only 2 people on the property, and we were capturing disembodied voices that we heard in the moment. We captured them on voice recorders. Shadow figures were running through our laser grids on command. The EDI box, the Ovilus, the REM pod. In my mind, if I could call it the perfect paranormal investigation, that's what it was, because every piece of equipment that we had running that night was validating every other piece of equipment, as well as our personal experiences. So I would say that was probably the most active location we've been to.
Wow. And that's the best part, like when you get stuff happening on command as well. And you've got that visual evidence. And
sometimes 2 pieces of equipment working together at the same time.
Absolutely. That's really absolutely good. Right. So in that instance, we investigated in July, and I don't know if any of your viewers have been to Florida in July, but it's sticky and humid and hot. And so there's obviously no air in this place. It's really a downtrodden location. And so Miranda and I were actually standing outside the main door just to kind of get a breeze on us for a few hours, or for a few minutes, because we had been in there for hours. And so we had a laser grid in the main doorway, and it was shooting down the main hallway there between the cells. And we were just talking, but looking into the door, and a shadow figure ran from right to left. And we're like, did you see that? And I said, yes. And so I said, can you do that again? Can you go back the other way? And it did. It ran back from the left to the right. And we were fortunate enough to capture that on night vision camera. So it was just a great experience. Like I said, one of those nights where everything was just really on point that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can get locations that are really haunted, but if you go on a night when it's really flat, you're not going to get anything.
Absolutely.
It's just one of being in the right place at the right time, isn't it?
It is. And, you know, when you go into those locations that for some reason or another doesn't have a lot of activity, it really validates those instances that do, right? So like I said, that night, the REM pod was going off, the K2s, the EDI box, the Ovilus, everything was, like I said, validating everything else. But then, you know, another night when you have that equipment not really active or doing anything, it validates the prior night, right? So for us, you know, some of those nights where it's off is just as telling as the nights that it's on.
I mean, we had a very active night last night in the prison near where we live with our team, and it was, I've not seen it like that in quite a while. I don't know if it's due to obviously the lockdowns we've been having, nobody going in there and doing any investigations, and all of a sudden it's starting to ramp up. But it was a very good night. We experienced quite a lot, from scratches to literally people getting touched. It was a very, very active night.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, it's fabulous. So how did you first get into the paranormal?
Well, my sisters and I, we've always had a fascination with the paranormal. You know, I'm sure a lot of guests say that, but so we would sit and watch the popular television shows of the time, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and such, and we'd say to ourselves, you know, why didn't they ask this question, or why didn't they use this technique, or why didn't they stay longer here? And we always told ourselves, if we had the opportunity to conduct a paranormal investigation, that we would jump at that chance. And we all come from a research-minded background, so all of us on the team have an advanced degree. So I've got a PhD, my twin has a PhD, Michelle has a JD, Cara has a JD, and Kim has a master's. And so we really use that research background to guide our investigations. We go in with the mindset of first seeing if we can debunk some of the claims. So we will go in the day before and do a day tour of the location, and we will look for everything. We'll look for street lights, dogs in the neighborhood, kids in the neighborhood, airline traffic, train traffic going by, vehicular traffic, anything that could, account for the quote unquote paranormal activity in that location. And so then when we go into the night of the investigation, we have all of those notes. We have where we're going to leave our stationary equipment for the night. So we really go in with that research background first, and then what we're left with after that, after we've controlled for everything else that we can, what we're left with is unexplainable. And that's what we put out in our videos. Yeah,
that makes sense. That does make sense. That's a good way of, like you say, getting all your baseline stuff.
Yeah.
So has there been any particular locations that's wanted you to go back for more, like unanswered questions? Any places really stood out for you?
We've had the opportunity to do multiple investigations at several locations. The Gilchrist County Jail was one of them. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary was one of them. One of the most unique investigations that we've been able to do has been at the Ma Barker House, which is located in Central Florida. And this was a very unique location because we were the first team to actually be allowed to investigate this house. And this was the site of the 1935 shootout between Ma and Fred Barker, who were two members of the Barker Carpus Gang, which was a very prolific bank robbery and kidnapping gang in the 1920s. And so they used this house as they had rented it in 1934. In November of 1934, they rented this house and was using it it as a hideout. And then on January 1935, J. Edgar Hoover and his men tracked them to this house. A shootout ensued, and Ma and Fred were killed in the house. The interesting thing is that the owners of the house, they did not know that they had rented it to Ma and Fred, but they maintained it in that condition. So the family maintained it from 1935 until 2016. And so when you walk in, there's bullet holes in the wall, there's bullet holes in the furniture, the floors are original, sconces are original, but it has that 1935 feel. So in 2016, they decided that they wanted to sell the property and the house. The new owners did not want the house. They were going to tear it down. So Marion County, Florida, actually bought the house and moved it to a new location. So when they moved it to that new location, we approached the county and said, will you allow us to be the first team to investigate this house? And they said, sure. And so this house sits on about 40 acres of just essentially Florida wilderness, right? You need a 4-wheel drive vehicle to get back to it. There's no electricity. There's no water. There's no pollution, air pollution, light pollution, none of that. So it's a very locked down environment that we had complete control over. And so it was a 2-night investigation for us, and we were finding such compelling evidence in that house that for us it was just a very unique investigation, and we had the opportunity to go in multiple nights. I actually became a docent there for several months, so I was leading tours into the house, and when I would go in alone, I would hear things, and I would say, hey Ma, hey Fred, and all of that. So that was a very unique experience for us. So to your question, I'd say that was one location that we had access to on multiple levels, and we were able to do some very interesting experiments there.
With that being in its original state still, that must hold a lot of energy.
It really did. It did hold a lot of energy. And, I always get the question, well, why don't you think they're on the land? Have you investigated the land? And the answer to that is no. First of all, we haven't gotten permission to investigate the land itself. But they had no ties to the land. They were very nomadic in life. The Barker Karpus gang did not have a one home per se. They had hideouts throughout the country. So they were very nomadic. And so for me, the thought that they traveled with the house was extremely compelling, because that was the place that they died, right? That's where their spirits were hiding out. That's where they in my mind would stay. And I think we had the evidence to back that up. And so the amount of energy that was released on January 16th, 1935, it is still the longest shootout in FBI history. It lasted over 4.5 hours. Over 2,000 rounds were fired between the FBI and the Barker and Ma and Fred. And like I said, Ma and Fred ended up dying in that house. They were killed. So we were capturing just amazing EVPs. The spirit box was, again, the spirit box, right? It's just a small handheld AM/FM radio, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. So it does not pick up radio stations that far out. And so we were actually in what we call the kill room. That's where Ma and Fred's body were found. And it's an upstairs room. And so we had the REM pod going, and we had the spirit box going. And I was just asking questions, and I said, what happened in this room? And through the spirit box, it said, they murdered us, we the ones dead. That entire phrase came through.
Wow.
It was extremely compelling when you've got this box that's shifting through radio stations at a very high rate. Obviously, we're not supposed to hear phrases coming through it. When you have that complete phrase coming through, that's extremely compelling. And so for us, back to the original question, David, having access to that house multiple times and doing multiple experiments there was really one of the highlights of what we've done as a group so far.
Wow. I was going to talk to you about the thoughts on nowadays equipment and apps. What's your thoughts on particularly like phone apps, tablet apps, things like that? Do you rate them or?
No, we do not use phone apps at all. When we go into an investigation, all of our phones are either off, or if we're using them to record, they're on airplane mode. And that's simply because for those apps, I don't know the algorithms behind them. I know that if you're using your phone on a daily basis, it hears you. For example, Miranda and I will be talking about Nike shoes or something, and the very next sponsored ad that comes on Facebook is for shoes. And so I know the phone hears me. So and it connects to to your location and all of that. So for us, I just there's a lot of unanswered questions with apps, so we do not use them.
That makes sense.
And then with handheld equipment such as the EDI box or the REM pod or the Spirit box, we really use those in conjunction with each other. So for example, if we go into a location and I'm getting what I feel is compelling things on the EDI box or compelling things on the Spirit box, in and of itself, sitting alone by itself, that's very cool and interesting. But when I have the EDI box going off at the same time, I've got, the Spirit box, the Spirit box going off or the REM pod going off, that's just really building our case. One instance that comes to mind is we were at the Grand Old Lady Hotel, which is in Balsam, North Carolina. And this is a hotel that was built in 1905. It was part of the railway system. And so it's a 3-story hotel. It's very lavish. For the time, it was extremely lavish. Has about 100 guest rooms in it. And it was really, it's still maintained in that period, right? So when you go now into it, there's no televisions in any of the rooms. It's very rustic. They want it that way. So a couple years ago, we had the opportunity to get the entire property to ourselves. And so it was my sister Jenny and Miranda from Ghost Biker and myself, and we had the hotel for the entire weekend. And so we were sitting in this room, and we had an EDI box on a dresser, and Miranda was holding the SLS camera. And there was a night light in the room. Well, the night light, it was motion, and we were sitting still. The night light goes off, which was extremely compelling because we're sitting there not making any movement. And so when Miranda had the SLS camera up, we started noticing some stick figures on there, and we said, "Can you touch the EDI box, the box on the dresser?" And you see this hand kind of move over and hit the EDI box, and the EDI box starts lighting up. Like vibrations had hit it. And I have actually captured that on camera. So I was able to get the SLS camera, and in the background, you see the EDI box and you see it. You see this thing on the camera, touch it. And so for us, because we've got 2 pieces of equipment going off at the same time, and we've got that personal experience, that makes it extremely compelling for us.
I agree with that, because we do use a few apps. One is the Alice box. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I have, yes, I've heard of it. Yes.
The Alice box, and what were we also
The
using?
Ovilus 3.
And both of those
come up with the same thing quite regularly. We've had that happen quite often. We also use an app called the Phasma box. I don't know if
I've
you've
heard of that one as well.
We found that one can be very, very good. Again, it takes time to get used to. A lot of people can't understand what it's trying to say, but I keep telling them that it's not actually meant to say anything. It's if you get anything from it, from what you ask, it's a bonus. Because I'm not sure, again, like you, I'm not sure how they program these apps. But I do know it does work, and it does work very, very well. It seems to, for us.
And that's fantastic. Any tool that you can use to really validate, and if you can use that, like I said, in conjunction with other tools, that's really is a bonus. It's just, and again, I'm not disparaging anybody or any team that uses apps. It's one of those things that we've just elected not to do, just because I don't know the science behind them.
That's absolutely fine. I'm quite I'm a person that tries to debunk everything I do. Including if a piece of equipment's going off, I'm always trying to seek an answer for it.
Absolutely.
In my head, I'm not instantly shocked that a REM pod goes off, or unless there's other pieces of kit going off at the same time, then I will consider it to be something other than anything normal.
Make sure it's
like
not just
batteries, things like that could possibly be draining.
Absolutely. And it is one of the things where when you get a piece of equipment, for us, we really do sit and test it. We just purchased the GS2 laser grid. A very interesting concept. And so, but it does take time. To your point, we've tested it, and we found that different things do affect it. For example, I was just playing around with it in a room that had a door that goes to the outside. And
Okay.
it was around sunset, and I had the laser grid on the wall. But when I opened the outside door, some sunlight came in. And all of a sudden this thing starts going off, and I'm like, okay, wait a second. So then I shut the door and it stopped. And so now I know that ambient sunlight was causing heat on the wall. And so those are the things that we have to be conscious of, when we go and investigate. If an air conditioning is running and the vent is coming up that wall or something, those are things that we really have to look for, to be conscious of, that this could affect it, and it probably isn't paranormal at that point.
Yeah, no, that makes
We just had
sense.
a question come in from Dennis Glenn. He said, do you have any interest in using retro recording equipment?
Thank you for that question, Dennis. And I'm assuming you mean something like a tape recorder or something like that.
Yeah, we've seen that.
I think it would be fascinating to use. We have not tried it yet, but that is absolutely an amazing idea. I know that there are a couple teams that do have one in their arsenal, and they've used it with really some great success. We have not tried that, but it's one of those things that I would absolutely love to try.
Going back to analog, it's something that they would recognize too, isn't it? Rather than the new digital way.
Absolutely. And to that point, recognition is absolutely important. And that's why when we go, we try to think of different things that we can use as trigger items. So for example, back to the Mom Barker house, we took in bullets. We actually took in a gun. We took in money. We splayed it out on the table and said, you can have this. We took in whiskey, cigars. We actually found a newspaper from that time period. So we took that in as well. When we went to Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, this is a Revolutionary War fort, we were in a solitary confinement cell, or what was used as a solitary confinement cell. So we took in bread and water and some cigarettes, things that we feel that if we say these are here for you, we're acknowledging your presence. These are things that you could be comfortable with or have. We feel that we've gotten a really good response from that. So every time we go to a location, we research it and figure out what we could take that'd be unique, that would be an interesting trigger item.
Definitely. I mean, some people make their own equipment now, don't they? When it comes to REM pods,
they do
put a REM pod in literally anything now. Anything that you could possibly think of, and it's a very, very good idea. I like it.
You're right. We actually, our friend Donald Martin from Southern Paranormal, he actually gifted us with a REM pod that's in a skull. It looks exactly like our logo. Yeah, it looks like our logo. So it was a skull, and then Miranda Young, she actually painted it with the exact colors of our logo, and it's fascinating. So that we take that on investigations now. He makes Slimers from Ghostbusters, so the little Slimer dolls. So put that into a REM pod. So he's doing a really great job of making them unique to any team that wants them. But it's a very cool idea. So we're very happy to have that in our arsenal as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
So another question come in from Valerie. What do you think of the Miracle Box of Steve Huff? His new one I think it's his new and last one.
It's interesting. Obviously, I haven't used it, and I'd love to know the inner workings behind it. Again, for us, any tool that could be used that could help us find answers, I think is fascinating. If we know how they're used, and if we can get something that can validate that, again, whether it be a REM pod or an EVP, for instance, or a shadow figure or something like that. I love any tools, because we don't know how spirits speak, or how they can communicate with us. I mean, we may find one that likes to move a pencil around, or others that like electronics. So I'm absolutely fascinated with anybody that comes up with a unique tool that they can use, as long as we know how it works and how the science behind it, and if we can use that in conjunction with something else.
You still can't beat your own body, can you? That's
no,
the thing.
Your own body,
Can't beat your own body.
Your own senses. Again, just going back to like a basic voice recorder, anything.
You're absolutely right. And for us, the voice recorders are absolutely our best piece of equipment. We've got 12 of them. So every time we're in a location, we're carrying one on us. We also have body cameras on us that record as well. And we leave voice recorders in every spot that we can. So we have ears on every every area of the location for the night. And we've captured some of our best evidence on EVPs. And for us, and I'm sure you know as well, that's the hardest to debunk for us. You know, a shadow figure, I can say this is extremely compelling, but if somebody can come and tell me what it was, then I'd like to have that dialogue. But when I know that there's only 5 female investigators in a location, we're the only people there, but yet I'm capturing a man's voice or I'm capturing a child's voice, that's extremely hard for me to debunk. So to your point, Jess, you know, having those voice recorders is extremely important. And when you have personal experiences that can back that up, you know, for example, if we're in a location and all of a sudden we're saying, you know, I feel cold, and then we capture an EVP. You know, that personal experience is just as important as the EVP.
Yeah.
It's difficult though these days, isn't it? If you capture like a spirit on camera, people always assume that it's been modified or in some way, you know, and they do not believe it. But again, it's that personal experience. If you know you've experienced something.
Yeah. And to that point, you know, we will never go in and say, oh, this place is haunted. What we say is we've captured unexplained evidence. For us in that moment when we're sitting there doing that investigation, we've captured an EVP or something happened with our equipment. In that moment, when we've controlled for everything else, that's unexplainable. Now, if somebody wants to come in and say, I think it's this, or this, I want to have that dialogue because I want to put out the best evidence that we can. And if somebody can explain that to me, then I will absolutely issue a retraction and say, you know, we have this as a theory now. It could have been. But for us in that moment, this was unexplainable. And that's how we present it. And so our audience can elect to believe it or not. But that's why we very rarely will say, oh, this place is so haunted. We say we've captured compelling, unexplained evidence.
Yes. I agree there.
So going back to an investigation you've done, the Lizzie Borden House, could you tell us a little bit more on that one?
Absolutely. So the Lizzie Borden.
I've seen it a few times.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's a fascinating place. It's one of those, you know, you see everybody going to. So a lot of people say it's commercialized, and it is to some extent. But you know, when you go to these locations and you've seen them on television shows, it's a lot different when you're in the moment, right?
Definitely.
So you're absolutely having this very tactile experience with history, right? I'm touching the doorknobs that Lizzie touched. I'm standing on the floor that Andrew Borden was killed at, or that Emma Borden was killed at, and so it makes it very real. Again, very tactile for us, which we love. So that investigation, we actually had the entire house to ourselves for the night. It was myself, Jenny, Michelle, and Cara, and we asked Miranda Young to join us on that investigation, which she did, and right from the get-go, we were having things that we couldn't explain. So, for example, when we first get to a location after we've done our day tour and stuff, we obviously go about the business of setting up our stationary equipment. So we'll set up stationary cameras, we'll set up stationary voice recorders, we'll set up stationary REM pods, handheld equipment and such. And so the first instance was we had a voice recorder in the room where Andrew Borden was killed. So they call it a parlor. So it was in the parlor. It was sitting on the mantle of the fireplace. And so as Miranda and Cara and I are upstairs setting up some more equipment, Jenny and Michelle are downstairs and they're just talking, right? Just between the two of them. And Jenny's back is to the camera and the voice recorder. And so as we're listening to this, you hear Jenny and Michelle talking, and then a man comes through and says, I'm standing right here next to you. Extremely compelling because there's no man there. And it's almost like, hey, look at me, I'm right here. So it's intelligent. And so then later on during the night, we were taking a break, and Jenny and Cara were sitting on the couch in that room and just, again, talking between the two of them. And we had been to the Villisca Ax Murder House a few months prior. And so they were comparing the difference between the Lizzie Borden Ax murders and the Villisca Ax murders. And so they're just kind of going back and forth. And Cara said, well, either way, it'd be a horrible way to go. And a man's voice was captured saying it was. and extremely compelling. Again, there's no men there, and intelligent. It's like it's listening to their conversation and responding and saying it was a horrible way to go. So those were two very compelling pieces of evidence. We were upstairs doing an EVP session in one of the rooms where children are said to be heard, and we did capture children laughing. Miranda has a periscope. Extremely hard to get this periscope to go off. But we're sitting there and we said, can you touch this? And the periscope starts lighting up. We were in another room upstairs and we were all in the room and we had the door shut. And Miranda had put a piece of equipment down on the floor. It was a K2 meter. She'd put the K2 meter on the floor and said, okay, here, you can play with that. And directly behind the door, a male said, ignore them. And we all heard it. All of us in the room said, did y'all hear that? We captured it on voice recorder, but you can clearly hear a man saying, ignore them. So the Lizzie Borden House was absolutely a fascinating experience. Again, just for the history, but also what we feel was compelling evidence.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
That's impressive. Like, I don't know, EVPs are just ones that
you just can't, there's no answer, is there? There's just nothing you can put it down to. Whereas it was with any other thing that you capture, you can kind of say, well, it could have been this, it could have been that. But with voice recorders,
yeah.
And the ones that are the most compelling, obviously, are those that are intelligent. So when you have like the Lizzie Borden House one, when you have it's almost like they're part of your conversation. And I think the approach that we have as Soul Sisters, we go in with a sense of empathy, with the intent of telling a story. And so when we first start our investigation, we'll introduce ourselves and we say, we're here to tell your story. Will you allow us to tell your story? And I think that approach really allows them to open up to us. I'm not saying that any of us are empathic per se, but I think that sense of empathy, that recognition that you have gone through something here, and we want to get that story out. And I think that's the reason why we do have a lot of intelligent responses. But then we also have those that seem to be, that residual, that blip in time. I'll go back to the Ma Barker house. When we first did that, the first night we investigated, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be there on the anniversary of the shootout. So the shootout happened January 16th, 1935. And so on January 15th, what we did is we set up all of the stationary equipment, voice recorders, night vision video cameras, different pieces of handheld equipment, and we left them in the house alone for the night. So we locked up and we left. And then prior to leaving, we had a voice recorder that I had pre-recorded questions on. So I hit play and it had about an hour's worth of pre-recorded questions. So even though we weren't in the house with the equipment, our voice was still there and we were asking questions, but we're not physically present there. So we left that voice recorder to run. We had all of our equipment there running. We locked the door and we left. So you hear the questions being asked, and through that we were getting responses. We were hearing knocks and bangs. We captured a light anomaly that I can't explain. And then after the voice recorder shut off, everything is running silently for a few hours. We captured a male's voice saying, get out. And then at around 5:30, which would have been on January 16th, which would have been the day of the shootout. The shootout happened at around 5. It started at around 5:30. Around 5:30, we captured 2 EVPs. The first one said, Freddie. The next one said, yeah, Ma. And the first one said, get ready. And I think that is residual. I think that's exactly what they said before the shootout happened. And so to be able to capture that was a tremendous experience for us. So even though it's not intelligent, just that residual capture was something that was extremely compelling.
Yeah.
Wow.
That gave me goosebumps.
It gave me goosebumps hearing it. I love going through evidence review after an investigation just for that very reason, right? We're listening to 99.9% of just silent static, but man, when you get that EVP and you're like, oh my gosh, we got this. It just gets that adrenaline going to listen to the next 10 hours.
Yeah. I mean, currently we're going through footage from a place we stayed at down in Cornwall in the UK. And we're still going through it for the evening, and I'm just hoping that we've caught something really good. It's filming for about 8 or 9 hours straight.
Oh, wow. Yeah. and like I say, evidence review is fantastic, and I'm sure you caught something, but that's
I'm
the
hoping
tedious
so.
part. Yeah, that, and a lot of people don't understand that. Sometimes when we leave a location, the owners will say, "Okay, when will we see your video?" And it's just like, you don't understand. We had 10
long it
voice
takes.
recorders running for 10 hours. We had
Yeah.
5 body cameras. We had 10 night vision video cameras, and we
Wow.
don't put that through software. We sit and listen to all of it, and we sit and watch all of it. So it usually takes about a month and a half or so to get a video out. But that's the part we really enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's only so many hours in a day.
There is.
Right?
And there's only so long you can look at the screen for.
Yeah.
And if this was a full-time job that paid, I would sit down every hour of the day and just listen to evidence. But unfortunately, bills are required to be paid. So
going back to like when you were saying houses being commercialized, I don't know if you ever seen when Nick did over here in the UK, he did 30 East Drive.
But yes.
Yeah, we went there, and you do hear a lot about it being, it's all hyped up and everything else. But when we went, that was a place that we were like, yeah, we're going back. We have to go back. Because it was just like, because you hear it, you think, oh, nothing's going to happen because it's so commercialized. As everyone hypes it up, but yeah, we got to go back there. That's another place.
It sounds fascinating. Whenever I come over there, I would love to do an investigation there and several other places in England and Ireland as well. And to your point, going to those commercial locations, we really started going to those to really build our portfolio, to really kind of, a sense, get a presence in the paranormal community, to get some legitimacy behind us. But to your point, the Lizzie Borden House, we captured some things I can't explain. The Villisca House, we captured things I can't explain. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary is amazing. It's very commercialized. They do different things besides paranormal, but the things that we captured there, I can't explain those. So while there is that sense of commercialism, we do enjoy going to those locations. We also love going to the smaller unknown locations, such as Ma Barker House, or places that have a story or a legend behind them. To investigate those places are fantastic as well. It really does kind of run the gamut. But you don't want to go in there and somebody say, oh well, Nick Groff did this, and or Zach did this, and it's just all demons. That's not really the case. So it really is kind of hard sometimes getting people to understand that what we do is a little bit different than what sensationalized media does. And so that's really kind of been our struggle. But I think the way we approach it, really with that historical narrative first, followed up with the investigations, I think that does add legitimacy to what we do.
Yes.
We've had another question coming from Dennis again. It says, if you were approached, would you do a season on a stream service like Discovery Plus, or are you happy with what you're currently doing? An all-female team and a different approach to investigating would be ace to be worldwide.
Well, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. That really humbles me. Thank you. We've actually been approached by 2 different production companies. The problem with that is they do want us to sensationalize. One of them asked us to bring a male onto the team, and we're very particular about our brand and how we do it. If we were to be able to get onto a streaming service or get a production company that will allow us to have really control of our brand and how we do things, then I would absolutely love to have that conversation. It is something that we would consider, but not at the risk of losing who we are and what we do.
No, that's
understandable, because like you say, you are who you are and you don't want to change that.
No,
exactly. Yeah.
Why should you?
Because it wouldn't be you then if you had to change it.
It's unique, isn't it? It's good.
No, I agree that.
Could you're doing an adventure, aren't you, with Miranda Young, the ghost biker?
Yes.
Very good for this.
Anything you want to say about that one?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, Miranda is Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations. Obviously I'm with Soul Sisters, and a couple of years ago, we actually just started following following each other on Facebook. So we had the opportunity to meet, and we did an investigation together. And she and I just really clicked as friends because I really enjoy her investigation style and how she really approaches history and what she does. So through that friendship, she and I, outside of Ghost Biker and Soul Sisters, she and I have formed a company called History, Highways, and Haunts, LLC. And so our goal with that is to really highlight history and then offer different historical tours and paranormal tours. And so we approached the city of Huntsville, Tennessee, and they have a small jail there in that city that has it ceased operation in 2009, but really has been quote unquote abandoned since 2017. And we asked the city if we can have that as our base of operations, and they agreed to allow us to do that. So she and I are now on a mission to open that location. Hopefully in the next couple of next few weeks, we will be open for historical tours of that jail, as well as historical tours around the city of Huntsville, and then paranormal tours and some different events and motorcycle tours and such, again, based out of that jail. But that's kind of where that's where our venture is right now.
And what a team, Miranda's amazing as well.
She's a very good friend. Very good friend. We've not met, but we're hoping to maybe next year.
Yes,
there's an event coming up where I think she's coming too. So I'm hoping to sit down and have a good chat.
Yes, yeah. So it's been fun. I think it'll be great for the city of Huntsville to have this new venture, and we're looking forward to it as well. I think it's going to open a lot of doors for paranormal investigators to come in and do some different experiments and investigations there. And like I said, it will be a base of operations for us, so we will be doing other things in the cities and the counties that are surrounding there as well.
I'm looking forward to following it all.
That'd be great.
Oh, thank you.
And hopefully when we come over, we'll have to have a nose.
Yeah, absolutely. When y'all come over, we'll get you a complete paranormal itinerary.
That'd be my dream. I just live and breathe paranormal. I love it.
I'm the same way. It's one of those where I never dreamed that this would take off as it has, but it's been a ride and an adventure so far. I think we may have
I don't know what happened.
Press the wrong button.
something we just went blank.
That's okay. I just got real big on the screen.
Sorry about that.
No worries at all. So, but to your point, David, it has been one of those things where when we first started, it was just for us to get together because my sisters and I live in different parts of the country. It was really for us to get together a couple, 4 or 5 times a year and do something that was unique, and really have that historical experience and do some really cool paranormal investigations. But then it has really grown and blossomed since then. My family would ask, what was it like to be in Fort Mifflin or Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum or some of these locations? And that's really why we started doing the videos, and then putting them on YouTube. And we really do have this really amazing audience that's been following us through this journey. And it really is humbling to me that people want to watch and are excited about what we do. So it is one of those things that has consumed me and what I do, but it's something that I absolutely love as well.
It's definitely blossomed a lot more now, hasn't it? And the paranormal in general. I just remember when I was growing up, there wasn't hardly anyone around that used to do this. Now there's just so many teams and people out there investigating.
There are, and I obviously social media has a lot to do with that, streaming and YouTube and all of that, the lives and all of that. For me, there is a difference in the paranormal community that really I'm involved in, and I think to some extent y'all are involved in. It really is a different breed, because while you have people that are quote unquote in the paranormal, you've got a community that we're in that is really history driven and science driven and research driven. And while the paranormal genre as a whole is large, I think we're on the smaller end of that. And that's, listen, not to disparage anybody that wants to go out and do a live or be in a location for that. But, for me, I think it loses something when you have somebody that just is going to go in and say, I'm going to do this paranormal investigation. I'm going to stream it live and that's it. right? There's no accounting for the historical perspective. There's no story or narrative that you're trying to tell. It's just me going in to see if I can get scared or and bring the audience with me. And so that to me is a little bit different. But the community that we're involved in that really delves into the history and brings that to life, that is what is so exciting to me. Because even if we go to a location and we don't find anything, I'm still going to put together a historical video of that, because I think that the narrative of the location is what is really important.
Yeah, it's like when we do it, I like to have the information on the building, the people. So like when you do get communication, you know who you're talking with.
Right.
So I like to know names.
Get different types of views on that, don't you? Because you get people that love to go into a location completely blank.
Yeah.
They see what they gather, and then once they gather that information, they look at the history.
And then
I understand it from both sides, but personally, I think it's better to know a little bit, just in case you do pick up anything along the way, especially like a voice recording or anything you could validate on the spot.
Yeah.
More so than having to go back and research your history again. I just prefer to do it that way.
You're absolutely right, and that's how we operate as well. We'll do a deep dive into the historical research of a location, and for that, because that allows us to, it really guides our investigation, right? So, for example, when we were at Fort Mifflin, we did a very deep dive into the historical narrative of that fort and what it was used for and why it was important. But that also allowed us to get our trigger items. It allowed us to actually direct our conversations to a specific person or group of people. So, for example, that solitary confinement cell that I was talking about, it was a subterranean casemate. So it's about 7 feet underground. And the guy that was in there, his name was William Howe. He was tried for treason, and he was hung on the fort, on fort property. And so that allowed us to formulate our questions specifically to him. And so when we went down there, as I said before, we left some water, some bread, some cigarettes, and we were talking to him specifically. And I said, we left water, we left you cigarettes, and we got a very audible thank you. And so that was compelling. So with us, we will do a deep dive into the history, try to get names that we can communicate with on a very specific level.
You kind of know then, don't you, what you need to take into the building,
absolutely,
and what you're kind of going to be trying to communicate with.
Absolutely,
you'll understand who's there. If it's a child, then you can bring childlike objects.
Exactly.
Instead of just guessing when you arrive.
If they like a tipple, you can take in a little glass with a bit of whiskey in or something.
Right? Yeah, we take whiskey in a lot. Whiskey, some moonshine and such. But then you have those places like Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary or Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, where you can get the history on 2 or 3 different people. But through the night, you could be communicating with a bunch of different people that you don't even know, but they want their story told. And that happened to us at Brushy several times. We get these disembodied voices. We don't really have a specific name to them, but it's a very active place with spirits that want to communicate.
I can imagine, because I was going to ask you if you've ever done any asylums. I can imagine that's quite an overwhelming kind of place.
It was Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and this is in West Virginia. The interesting thing is when you roll up onto this location, it's massive. It is. It kind of takes your breath away with the scale of the building. So again, it's one of those where you see it on television, but when you get to it, it was intimidating just from a perspective of setting up equipment. But it was a very active night for us. It was actually our second investigation. So we started with West Virginia State Penitentiary, and we followed up with Trans Allegheny as our second one.
Wow.
So we're still in the early baby step stages here. But the most compelling piece of evidence from that is there were 5 of us, and then there were 2 docents that had to stay on property. But we had asked them to come with us through one of the walkthroughs. And so all of us are in this hallway. So everybody that is on the property that night are together in this hallway, and we're just kind of talking. And this scream came down the hallway from the other end of the hallway. It was the loudest scream I've ever heard at one of these investigations. Everything that we had running on the property that night picked it up. And even the docents were like, what was that? And so, we kind of take off towards it to see if we can figure it out. And there was nobody else on the property. So that was a very compelling piece of evidence. We captured a light anomaly that was interesting. One of the docents had some dowsing rods, so we used those to some extent. So it's a very intimidating place from a perspective of investigating, but just amazing history as well as paranormal activity.
Yeah. Because they still have some of the old furniture in there, don't they? Like the wheelchairs and stuff.
Yes, they do. Just, the hardwood is all original. The doors are original. And so, when you think about, this was a location that was built to house, it was only supposed to house 250 patients, right? And it was going to be one-on-one treatment. We were going to, really, really help these people through therapy and sunlight and all of that. And these solariums. And so 250 people was going to be the max. When it closed, it had over 2,500 people in it. And, at that point they had really digressed into lobotomies and shock therapy and water treatments and all of that. So you have all of this energy that is really permeated into the walls itself, into the floors themselves. And so I think that's the reason why when you go into some place like an insane asylum or a prison, it's not a happy place. It was not a place that was joyful at all and just something happened. This had a longevity of really negativity. And I think that's the reason why we get a lot of evidence from those locations, because of just what happened in those walls.
Am I right in thinking it's the one with lots of outer buildings?
It's got two outer buildings. When we were there, we could not get access to those buildings. It has two outer buildings, but it's really one large building. It has.
I could be thinking of another one.
Yeah, you may be thinking of
Waverly Hills.
Waverly has a large structure as well.
Okay.
These were built really in a style, again, of therapy and rehab. So it was built with that in mind. So it has a large main administration block, if you will, and then the hallways go out and then they stagger and then they go out and then they stagger again. So it almost looks, so if we're looking at it this way, you've got this, and then it comes up and then out and then up and then out. So wings, I guess, like bat wings, if you will. So a lot of hallways, and I think it's 4 stories. So a lot of hallways, a lot of corridors. You can still go down into the shock therapy treatment rooms, and all of that equipment is still down in there. So intimidating again from that standpoint. But just walking into those walls again, to have that historical experience, right? Just to walk through them, even if you're not doing an investigation, to us is really what this is all about.
Yeah. It's like some of the prisons over here. The majority of those are just steeped with history. And I think the history overtakes in
the one we was in last night dates back to 1610. They've got cells that are kind of hidden behind walls that go underneath. There's only a couple of them that they've started to uncover. Very, very fascinating, and I'm sure there's a lot more leading on from those, but they've never actually gone underneath and uncovered them, which is a shame. It's just layers upon layers upon layers upon history, just history and history and history.
And that's
the women, children, and all the crimes that they used to be in there for was petty. A lot of it.
Yeah. And again, that is really why we do this. That's why I really want to get over to England in that area, because don't get me wrong, I love American history, but we just don't have the longevity that y'all have. So to be able to go into those locations such as you're describing would just be a tremendous opportunity for us. I actually think one of the oldest locations that we've gone into, I was actually able to go in a couple weeks ago, and this was a house that was built in the right before the Revolutionary War. But it started out as a small cottage, and then it just, the owners just built out and up. So the original structure is still there. And it was fascinating, just really, again, to be able to touch those walls and touch those floors. It's one of those things that for us, that's the main experience. That's why we do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice when you can just walk in and just touch something original.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah.
You feel the energy from it as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's
sorry.
No, go ahead, David.
I was going to say, are you in any way mediumistic? Any kind of sensitivity? Are you quite sensitive to the paranormal?
The way I answer that is no, but then I will couch it in the fact that I am a twin, and I think that that Jenny and I do have that connection that other people don't. So I think we do use that for when we go into these paranormal investigations. I do think that helps us, and that maybe gives us a little bit more empathy or empathic abilities, if you will. I don't claim to be an empath. I don't claim to be a medium or anything like that. But I will say that I do feel things when I go into these locations. But it's one of those that I'm not really going to proclaim as being an ability. It's just one of those things that I use to help guide our investigations.
Yeah, that's like
you can feel the energy change. It's like somebody's had an argument. You can kind of feel that change, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, we've started doing meditation and find that is definitely opening us up a lot more for things we're seeing, things we're experiencing. So yeah, I'm going to keep that one going. And hopefully, I mean, it does interest me. Mediums do interest me, but at the same time, I want to be that investigator that I don't want to be a medium. I just want to have a bit of ability and investigate alongside with that. It would be very good to have.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we also do in some of these locations is we sleep. And I know Miranda, she is very big onto this as well. And as she likes to say, it's one of those things that it's the most vulnerable state that you can be in. And I know that she's had a lot of evidence and things occur because she does that. And I think we have as well, because it does put you in a vulnerable state. So we have done that at several locations. But, you know, to your point, to walk in and really, you know, use your body as the tool, right? Back to your point earlier, Jess, to use that as the tool to really feel the environment when you go in, to put yourself in that environment and say, okay, I'm walking into a fort that was built before the Revolutionary War. I'm walking into a house where I know 2 people were bludgeoned to death, and to put yourself in that moment, in that time, to try to get yourself into that mindset. That's really what we try to do. And I think that's what we also try to do with our videos. You know, we want to put the audience in that location with us, because a lot of people, we're fortunate that we get to go to these places, right? I get to go to the St. Augustine Lighthouse or Brushy or Villisca or Lizzie Borden, and a lot of the audience won't get to have that experience in their lifetime. So if we can bring that or bring the audience with us in that location, that's really what we want to try to do.
Okay.
I hope that's what you get to do.
It
would be amazing to follow. Really will.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Say as well, have you got any more podcasts coming up that people can watch and follow?
Not so much.
Just fascinating.
Oh, thank you. I have been interviewed a lot on podcasts. Miranda and I are going to kind of incorporate that into this new venture that we're doing as well. So we will make that announcement when we're up and running with that. But all of our videos can be found on our YouTube channel or on our website or Facebook. We also have a spin-off series that we're doing right now called Landmarks, Legends, and Lore. And what we're doing with those is not so much a paranormal investigation, but talking about localized legends or lore. This last one that we did was haunting aviation. So we looked at 5 different airline crashes or airplane crashes that are reported to be haunted by those that perished in those airline disasters. We've done haunting cemeteries, haunting bridges. So really just taking a theme and kind of running with the legends that surround those. So that's been very interesting for us. It's allowed us to film at different locations as well. So that's really kind of what we're busy doing aside from the investigations. But we will have some more investigation videos coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Wow.
Looking forward.
Oh, thank you.
Good to watch. Look forward to that.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously we follow you anyway.
We do.
And Miranda. But any of the viewers watching, if you're not following already,
we highly recommend that you do.
Head over to Soul Sisters Paranormal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I can't wait to meet you guys when we get over there to
It'll be
England
fantastic.
next year. Yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely plan to come over.
Yep. Y'all come over here and
need
we'll
to
see you over there.
Yeah, definitely.
Just want to say as well, happy 4th of July.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going out here in just a few minutes. We'll be at our new location. It's not open yet, but we'll be sitting out there with our table and information and watch the 4th of July parade and stuff. So it'll be a fun night.
Wonderful. Have
Fantastic.
a lovely.
Have a nice time.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And I really do appreciate the support and thank you for having me on tonight.
It's been great. Thank you for your time.
Us.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us.
Right. Well, we'll let you go and celebrate 4th of July.
Thank you. Y'all have a great evening.
Have a
Thank
lovely
you very
evening.
much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kristy.
Bye.
Right, guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure catching up with all your comments. Hi, Megan. Thank you for joining
Hi, Megan.
us.
I think is that the girl from last night? Possibly.
Hope you had a great night. We will be back next week. Unfortunately, week before we had problems with Jamaica Inn. So we will be back next week doing their live. So we will see you then.
Yeah, we should be back next Sunday, same time with the Jamaica Inn team.
Yeah, 7:00.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us again. It's been
See
a
you all
pleasure.
soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.